In this video, we're going to discuss stakeholder management, which is one of the most critical skills for enterprise architects, security architects, business architects, cloud architects, and honestly, any executive. We will discuss what is stakeholder management. We will briefly talk about what goes into stakeholder management, and we'll talk about why stakeholder management is one of the most critical skills for cloud architects, AI architects, enterprise architects, or any executive. So to begin, what is stakeholder management? Well, part of any business redesign is the process of identifying who the key people are in the organization, and they're called stakeholders. And we have to analyze their needs, because we can't design something for them if we don't know what they're actually looking for. We have to work with these key stakeholders, which is going to be necessary to get their support when necessary, but also find their needs and help them create creative solutions to challenges they have. And ultimately, at some point, we have to sell the architecture, and the stakeholders have to want it for their organization, and they have to want to adopt it. So in order to influence stakeholders, that'll be critical as well. So stakeholder management is not just talking with the CIO here and talking with the CFO here. It's about building trust. It's about generating influence, and it's making sure that we can align the organization's business needs with the ultimate technology solutions that we actually design. And that's why it's so critical, because we have to, as architects, design business outcomes, increased revenue, improved employee productivity, decreased operating expenses, something like that. So we have to find out what that even is, and the only people that can even tell us what that is are the key stakeholders in the first place. Now, as we start thinking about stakeholders across the organization, I want you to understand they may have different needs. The salespeople may want a product faster, but the product people in the company may want to make it a little slower to make sure that it works properly. So different stakeholders will have different priorities. Different stakeholders will speak in a different language. For example, and I'll speak in a different language to the CFO than I will the director of IT, and that's going to be necessary to do that. And of course, we have to care about each stakeholder has certain things that are important to them, and we have to find a way to try to get as many of them as possible, and potentially even negotiate between the stakeholders to get something that's going to work for most people. So that's the key of stakeholder management. We're going to even anticipate their needs. So if we can anticipate their needs, we can come up with future roadmaps for them. If we can anticipate their objections, we can design a strategy to communication plan to show them why they need this despite some challenges along the way. So hope that makes sense to what is stakeholder management. So what goes into stakeholder management? Well, we have to first find the key stakeholders. Maybe they're the executives, which they usually are. Maybe there's some business leaders along there. There's some IT teams that are in there. There's some key players that are not the managers, but are very important, typically speaking as well. There are going to be regulators that we may have to speak with as well, or vendors we may have to speak with, especially in an enterprise architecture with a few hundred vendors. Now, once we know who the stakeholders are, we have to analyze their needs. We have to understand their level of influence in the organization, their key interests, their key pain points, their risk tolerance, and what they want. Not that we can get everybody what they want, but we have to at least try or see what they want. Now, this process of stakeholder management is constant engagement, and it's constant communication. So we may be communicating with them, tailoring a message for their needs. For example, I might be translating an AI system into what that actually could do in different terms to the chief financial officer, and even different terms potentially for the CEO. So making sure that we're talking about the same thing, but in the language that's going to make sense and what matters to that organization we speak with of that content we're talking about. So we will be communicating constantly. We'll be doing presentations periodically, constant communications like an email. We'll be writing briefs, so we could be doing executive briefings, but there's going to be a lot that actually goes on to that. Now, we will have to set expectations and stakeholders. For example, some organizations right now want the perfect AI solution by tomorrow, and they don't have any quality data, so we may need to set some expectations that we need to do this first, and then this second, and here's a reasonable timeline, that type of thing. We will constantly have to clarify scope to determine what's in scope. We will have to talk about the trade-offs of various options, because every business knows there's no perfect solution. So what are the possible options? And then they can make a determination after evaluating all the trade-offs. What kind of timelines are we talking about? So I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, as stakeholders, one of the things we're going to have to do is conflict resolution. Different parts of the business and different leaders may not like each other. They may have an animosity to each other, or they may have competing needs. So we're going to have to kind of negotiate between stakeholders. So it's going to take a lot of finesse here, a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of executive presence, a lot of empathy along the way. Now, also, typically, we will be both creating and working with the organization's governance, and we'll be documenting our decisions, documenting the rationales, and making sure that there's some kind of accountability. So the architecture is going to go through, say, an architecture review board, which we may even create that from the key group of stakeholders. So why is this so important? Why is stakeholder management so critical for the enterprise architect, the cloud architect, the AI architect, the security architect? Well, I'm going to say it's a big part of our job, probably 40 or 50% of it. But if we want to align the business with the technology so we get some kind of marriage where we get some kind of business benefit, if we don't know what the business needs because nobody's speaking to the business stakeholders and nobody's speaking to the technology stakeholders to see what's possible, well, there's no way we're getting it. And that's why 70 to 90% of organizations' technology spending doesn't work because they didn't align their technology with their business. Now, we will also have to exercise influence. If an organization has a security need and they don't fill that security need and they get hacked, it could be potentially catastrophic for that organization. So we will have to influence the decision makers into making the right decision. So make sure so that a lot of C-suite, a lot of executive presence, a lot of emotional intelligence, lots of sales skills here. Now, by doing so, by having strong relationships with the organization stakeholders, if and when you make a recommendation, they're going to be much more likely to take it serious than if you don't have a good, strong relationship. Now, when you finally do have an architecture and everybody's agreed to the architecture and the key stakeholders are bought in, the users will support the architecture too because the management and the key stakeholders will support it. I've seen implementations where they didn't have good stakeholder management and the tech teams would do something and then the manager would say, don't use this stuff, go back to the old thing. So that's why we need the stakeholders on board and nothing will succeed without it. Now, the key of stakeholder management is going to be critical for trade-off management. Option A does this, but option A comes with these challenges. Option B does this, but option B comes with these challenges. When we can map all that out and present it to the business executives and say, which of these two things is going to be better for your business? We think it's this, but what do you think? Now we're doing a lot. We're managing the trade-offs. Now let's talk about risk mitigation. When we have all the technology and all the business people speak to each other and it's all married together, we have a full picture represented by the experts for the various components of the business. The business typically does better, and we typically can mitigate risks. And all in all, by having this kind of a function and by having a team that buys in and supports, it's going to be much smoother to make any kind of new architecture transition. And that's why stakeholder management is considered the most important skill by over 50% of architects. To me, it's one of the most critical skills because there's other skills that I feel that are almost as equally important. So in this video, we discussed what is stakeholder management. We talked about what goes into stakeholder management and why stakeholder management is such a critical skill for cloud architects, enterprise architects, security architects, AI architects, business architects, what have you. Now, if you'd like to become a security architect, an enterprise architect, a cloud architect, an AI architect, we have a free architecture webinar each week where we talk about the exact skills you need for the job and all the steps you need to take to get hired. And it's not just developing the skills. There's much more that goes into it. And we'll teach you about this, and it's completely free. You can sign up for one of our free architecture webinars in the description of this video. And we'll come to these discussions. We'll go over the role, and you can ask me any questions you want live and free on Zoom. So register for an architecture webinar. The link is in the description of this video. Also in the description of this video are many free resources to help you win an interview or become a cloud architect or become an AI architect or other things as well. So if you're interested in any of these things and you'd like some free resources to help you get there, they're also in the description of this video. Now, if you enjoyed this video on what is stakeholder management and why stakeholder management is so important, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to help you in your architecture career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in another video or a free webinar. Take care.